In 1988, a tabletop RPG was released to the world, taking inspiration from sci-fi giants such as Blade Runner and Ghost in the Shell. Since then, Cyberpunk has grown to such admiration that its very name has taken over the technological dystopian genre. The inner turmoil of what makes a person human is under a microscope in Cyberpunk's new anime Edgerunners. And descending into the depths of Night City, following the adventures of the friends of David Martinez can be a neon technicolor light show.
Hey, it's Patrice with Screen Rant, and we'll be doing the dirty work and listing 20 things you might have missed in Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Let's get it.
And unless you visited Afterlife for a drink, there are some pretty big spoilers ahead. If Neuralink wasn't a murderous disaster, it would have gone on to make Edgerunners a reality, as almost everyone in the Cyberpunk universe uses the projection-like devices that Neuralink and Google Glass have been dreaming about since the early 2010s. One of the earliest links the show shares with its gaming counterpart are the look and usage of the implant the characters have. For the less technologically literate in the crowd, a HUD is the pieces of usually non-diegetic information games have on screen. For example, like the mini-maps that are in the corner. Cyberpunk, by the way of its genre, lets the HUD be a diegetic part of a character's experience, and the ones in Edgerunners bears more than a striking resemblance to the HUD seen and used in the game. Every story needs a driving force in the plot to keep it moving, whether it be an internal drive for change or growth via the main character, or an external force forcing the issue. In Cyberpunk 2077, one of these external forces is the need for money and the contracts that you have to complete to obtain it. And one of the earliest suppliers of these contracts is Wakako. Wakako may seem like a polite elderly woman, but behind that facade is a woman with as much blood on her wrinkled hands as she has white hair. Not that she has ever committed any of these murders firsthand. She leaves those matters to those more prone to violence. But maybe all the dinging of pachinko machines is a way to dilute the sounds of plots and plans against various actors in Night City. But Wakako's influences are as vast and her status as respected as she is innocent for her husband's death. So it's no surprise she makes a rather important appearance in the lives of those in Edgerunners. So it's no secret that the world of Cyberpunk is one of many in a long lineage of cynically looking at a dystopian technologically capitalistic future, one of the effects of which may be the repetition of architecture and the need of efficiency and profit. What evidence is there, you ask? Well, if you played Cyberpunk 2077, which we will now call 2077 for time's sake, then David's apartment may be all the proof you need. Before he moves to the bigger mansion, David lives in a small apartment. From the placement of his bed to the view he has outside his window, beyond any reasonable doubt, at the very least, these are inspired by that of Nebula's V of 2077. Now let's have a little fun. We can visit David's building, Mega Block 4 in 2077, but we can't get in. And unfortunately, by the time 2077 rolls around, Martinez has already become a legend and drink in the afterlife, meaning there's no way to get in and walk around. What if they look the same because they are? This is less speculation and more just putting two and two together. If mega corporations are responsible for most, if not all things within their fields, and we have direct evidence of repetition, then it's more than reasonable to say that both V and David pay rent to the same landlords, just years apart.
Edgerunners get their names due to their lifestyles, riding on the edge between the legal and illegal, living in the gray, running on the edge. You get it.
Anyway, sneaking into a bar exclusively to the more morally malleable is a great example of this. That bar? The Afterlife, a bar that serves drinks in honor of those who came before. Only legends can rightfully ascend to the shelves of the Afterlife. Now for some pretty intense spoilers. After David was killed in the end of the anime, he was honored in the very bar he helped Rebecca sneak into. Visiting the bar in 2077, you can now purchase a David Martinez. The David Martinez, which should have been called the David Martini, but missed opportunity aside, is simply a shot of vodka and a splash of Nicola. If you'd like to taste it yourself outside of the game, go watch How to Drink's video. His recreation is as close as any.
And who would be the one to sell you the David Martinez, you ask? Well, none other than Claire Russell, a mechanic turned bartender with a knack for memorizing recipes and mixing drinks.
Her involvement in the beginning of 2077 is how V and us the audience learn about the Johnny Silverhand. Appearing rather shortly amongst the patrons in the afterlife, this mixologist is far more than she appears. Her story technically starts as a mechanic, taking the afterlife as a side gig of sorts. She then meets and marries Dean Russell, a loving, supportive relationship that, like any work of fiction, ends horribly with his gruesome death in a street race. So when we meet the version of her in Edgerunners, it causes a question to bubble to the surface. For a split moment, you see her smiling. This entire plot takes place 1 year before 2077, the year her husband Dean will ultimately die in the street race. Could we be seeing a pre-widowed Claire? A question we can only hope will be answered in the comments, of course. The cast of the anime have a few hangout spots in Night City, one of them being the aptly named Turbo Bar. A smaller note in 2077, but one that is absolutely crucial in David's growing camaraderie with the rest of his crew. Not to the level of misnomer, but Lizzie's bar is not well named, and if there was any doubt as to what the primary purpose was for this establishment, then episode 4 should put that to rest.
Just think for a sec, what kind of bar is roped off but has no windows?
Lizzie specializes in erotic brain dances, or BDs. Not to taint your perception of the technology though. Just to explain how BDs work, they're pretty much the technological equivalent to Harry Potter's pensieve. Memories that are played back and experienced by others. And if you'd like, you can visit and explore Lizzie's in 2077 and probably should. Unfortunately for David, his visit has him and the gang leave empty-handed. But on your next go around Night City, make sure to stop by the futuristic BD strip club and grab Lizzie's pistol. Just make sure to look closely because it won't be sitting on the counter. So now for why we needed to explain how BDs work. These aren't just MOV files with Oculus support. They have to be created and edited like any visual medium. And one of its most well-regarded creators is Jimmy Kurosaki. We get to meet this slender, sinister director in episode 5. He creates far more than your generic run-of-the-mill thrill experiences. What he's paid most for are the things called XBDs. BDs that contain extremely horrific acts.
Yeah, it's a good thing that bro is taken out in that same episode so we don't have to worry about him.
Now boot up your PC or console and head over to his lab, which is missing of course, but what you can find is one last XBD that shows his last moments, and a warning cautioning those who view not to be like David. The Jacked and Coke bar is a clever pun to begin this section. If you aren't aware, there's a cocktail called the Jack and Coke. It is one of, if not the most popular combination in the US. A bar named after it might be a bit too on the nose though. In 2077, the location was Vista Del Rey. Edgerunners, however, uses it as a background to a pretty crucial moment in episode 3. The scene works with an Ocean's 11-like vibe, minus David started stumbling. In a moment of great criminal improvisation, the keys are stolen, then the data. Alright, so we're cheating a little with this one, because by any definition of the words, this is in fact not a reference to the game in the show, but the other way around. All the others have been parts of the show that are inspired or ripped straight from 2077. However, we have a visitable setting taken from the show for the game. Kiwi's apartment in the Watson district can be traveled to and explored. Doing so shows a sorry fate for the home of the nefarious Netrunner, most likely due to her untimely demise in the last episode. Speaking of characters who flatlined in the finale, whereas Kiwi was given a long scene to expound and fight for her life, Rebecca's life was taken out of nowhere,
which I'm still very salty about. She could have lived and the ending wouldn't have been affected at all.
Her brother's death via street-pissing psycho is even more abrupt. But don't worry, if you'd like to pay your respect to these trigger-happy siblings, their shared living space is explorable in 2077. Just make sure to take care of Aaron before you lose access. So this is a weird one because there's a spoiler for both Cyberpunks in this entry. So if you didn't already, go find a few of 2077's endings and get back to us. Got them? Good. So after a hefty payday, Lucy and David get to upgrade to a luxury apartment together. A stylish space with a futuristic chandelier and a view. In one of the fewer more happy endings, if you want to call 6 months to live happy, V can also be upgraded to a very luxurious living space. It even has a futuristic chandelier and a view. Now we're not suggesting that these two apartments are one and the same, but it's undeniable that the look of their new apartment is at the very least reminiscent of that of V's. Maybe like regular apartments, even the more luxurious ones are simply copied and pasted from one to another, furthering the idea that in a world where life and humanity is more accepting of murderous machines, individuality and expression is stifled for efficiency. Continuing with our backwards Easter eggs, we have David's iconic yellow jacket and Rebecca's guts shotgun. It'd be hard to miss the jacket if you've played through the Edgerunners update, but just in case you haven't, play through the Over the Edge side quest. This entire quest is filled with references and plain mentions of David and the rest of the anime cast. And at the very end, who other than Falco would offer you the jacket in return to stop looking for them. Head to South Rancho Coronado and Santo Domingo and claim your prize. If you've already seen the anime, then finding Rebecca's shotgun shouldn't be as difficult as the jacket, which is odd given Guts' secondary effect being as useful as it is. Rebecca dies, still salty about that, in Memorial Park right before the final battle of the anime, so it's as simple as making your way over to Corpo Plaza, walking past the monks, and picking up the shotgun. A gun that may not have the best accuracy, but it does have a 6% poison chance and a ricochet effect. Not a personal choice, but the DB2 Satara shotgun is available all throughout 2077. It's common and a solid choice if you have no other class weapon. David even gives one to the newbie in the anime. That last entry was so short because the sheer volume of reused weapons within the anime is honestly just wild. So in order to get through it all, we gotta start now. Starting with an extremely common pistol, the Constitutional Arms Unity. It's your plain Jane pistol from any action game. Beyond the snake naming conventions, the D5 Copperhead is simply the cyberpunk equivalent to the AK-47. The first smart pistol, the HJKE-11, is basically a real-life aimbot. The HJSH-18 Masamune is an assault rifle that ricochets. What more could you want? Most interesting thing about the M10AF Lexington is its apparent affinity by the NCPD. Ever see the effects of real-life railguns? Well, the M76E Omaha is that, but small enough to fit in a briefcase. The MK31 HMG is to handheld guns what cannons are to handheld guns, big, bulky, and not a handheld gun. The use of Malorian Overture amongst players and characters is simply because it's there, and outside of a 200% damage on headshots, nothing special. Why are we ending on the Crusher? It's the oldest amongst the bunch, apparently being available since the year 2020. Someone somewhere is taking notes on these, so let's move on.
Another list inside of a list video? Yes sir, we are getting meta in this one because the clothing the citizens of Night City wear is very interesting.
Kiwi rocks this cybernetic jaw mask, giving a whole new meaning to lockjaw. Interface plugs are implants that let you interact with the many smart objects in Night City, from weapons to hands-free driving. If you like that scene with Quicksilver, you'll love David's use of military-grade Sandevistan, slowing time to evade an attack within milliseconds. Ever wanted to be the Indiana Jones of the future? Well, the atom-thin monowire is the implant for you. Not only are dermal implants useful, but their use as basic interactive modules is also almost a reality. Synthetic lungs are pretty self-explanatory. Fortified ankles are used in the game for greater jumps, but the fact that nobody has used them to recreate Michael Jackson's lean is a crime. Being able to charge melee attacks are Gorilla Arm's main use. Cyber optics allow you to have an Instagram filter on everything, with some being useful. Without the Cyber Deck, which is an extremely advanced computer that can be compacted and implanted, the entire lifestyle Netrunners rely on would be useless. The ending of Edgerunners sees David being strapped into a prototype Arasaka exoskeleton, and it's ultimately this action that will lead to his inevitable demise. Yeah, that was pretty dense. So we'll take a short break with a light feature on this list. What do you get when you mix a self-driving vehicle and a ride-sharing service? What you get is the ever-cordial Delamain, an AI running an entire taxi service. Not that he runs the cars or plans investments or even is the head of the company. The Delamain Corporation in Night City is completely ran by Delamain. The AI is so widespread that it's no surprise that it shows up in the Edgerunners series. Because he's an AI, his acquisition of the company cannot be for the gain of capital. He doesn't need to eat or sleep or drink or relax. His existence is to run the service, to make money, to stay alive. There is no end goal. We should probably stop there, otherwise some questions arise about capitalism as a whole, and we don't need to go that deep into all that in this video.
But just to be clear, it's pretty obvious that Edgerunners and Cyberpunk in general is a light critique, we'll say, of capitalism as a whole.
We all know the early release of 2077 was layered with bugs and game breaks. But with trial and error and patience from CD Projekt Red, its current form is far more stable. Yet Edgerunners still isn't afraid to poke fun at its older sister. An early form of 2077 had an issue with the Night City police force. Many noticed and complained that the anti-cyber psycho force would appear from almost nowhere. Luckily, those issues were patched. Unfortunately for David and his friends, their story takes place a year before the issue was noticed. So in episode 6, Rebecca still has to contend with them appearing from seemingly nowhere. The almost entirely cybernetic monster with a penchant for murder and growth does much more than just act as a physical opponent to be beaten. He has almost completely removed all human parts of himself. He's still got the brain, albeit highly modified, in order to live longer, move faster, be stronger. The price he pays? Sanity and humanity. Edgerunners fails to annihilate this foe, but we as V still can. The finale song played in Edgerunners is called I Really Wanna Stay at Your House, written by the lead singer of Let's Eat Grandma, Jenny Hollingworth. It's about an ex-boyfriend who died of bone cancer. The song laments the loss of someone you love in a hauntingly beautiful way. It also mirrors the passing of David and Lucy's mourning thereafter. Just to not end things too sad, speaking of that ending again, I'm just gonna reiterate that Rebecca did not need to die, y'all.
I mean, okay, maybe it made sense thematically, but man, did they have to take her out in the last 10 minutes just to rub it in? Okay, I'm just salty, ignore me, but here's to hopefully getting another Cyberpunk series in the future.